couple files for divorce after 30 years, only to discover their marriage was never legal. A bureaucratic error sparks a heated battle over assets. Hello, welcome. Leave a like, subscribe, activate notifications, and enjoy this story. Jack sat alone in the quiet of their once vibrant home, the walls echoing memories of laughter, love, and life shared over 3 decades. He held a crumpled letter in his trembling hands, a letter that had been tucked away, forgotten, for far too long. As he unfolded the paper, his heart pounded, the weight of the words yet unread pressing down on him. This was not just any letter. It was a revelation that would shatter everything he thought he knew about the woman he had loved for 30 years. What he was about to discover would make him question every moment, every memory, and every promise they had ever made to each other. Mary, his wife, had always been his rock, the one who held their family together through every storm. But now, in this moment of quiet reflection, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The air felt heavy, charged with a tension that was almost palpable. He hesitated, his mind racing through the possibilities of what this letter could contain. Yet, nothing could have prepared him for the truth that was about to unfold. A truth that would leave him reeling, struggling to understand how their lives had been built on something so fragile. As he began to read, the room seemed to close in around him, the walls narrowing as the first words pierced through the silence. This was the moment that would define everything: their past, their present, and their future. But could their love survive the storm that was about to hit? The answer lay in the letter, in the secret that had been buried for years. And once it was revealed, there would be no turning back. The antique grandfather clock in the corner of the living room chimed 7 times, its solemn tone echoing through the silent house. Jack Pearson, a man in his early 60s with salt and pepper hair and deep-set wrinkles around his eyes, sat motionless in his favorite leather armchair. His weathered hands trembled slightly as they clutched an old, yellowed envelope. The room around him was a testament to a life. Shared photos of smiling faces lined the mantelpiece. A quilt made by Mary's grandmother draped over the back of the sofa, and the faint scent of Mary's favorite lavender candles still lingered in the air. But now, these familiar comforts felt like relics from a different life, one that was crumbling before his very eyes. Jack's gaze fell on the envelope in his hands. The paper was brittle, its edges frayed with age. His name was written on the front in Mary's elegant cursive, a handwriting he'd recognize anywhere. How had he never seen this before? His heart raced as he carefully opened the seal, dreading what secrets it might contain. As he unfolded the letter inside, a small, pressed daisy fell onto his lap, a flower from their first date at Central Park over 3 decades ago. The sight of it sent a jolt of pain through his chest, a bittersweet reminder of simpler times. With a deep breath, Jack began to read. "My dearest Jack, by the time you read this, we will have already exchanged our vows. Or so the world believes. There's something I need to confess, something that has been eating away at me since the day I discovered it. Our marriage, Jack, it isn't legal. There was an error in the paperwork, a mistake that went unnoticed. We aren't husband and wife in the eyes of the law. I've agonized over whether to tell you this. I know how much our wedding day means to you, how you've always dreamed of a perfect, fairy tale beginning. I couldn't bear to shatter that dream. But as I write this, on the eve of our wedding, I'm torn between my love for you and the weight of this secret. I tell myself that our love is what truly matters, not some bureaucratic oversight. Yet the guilt gnaws at me, whispering that our entire marriage will be built on a lie. I've decided to hide this letter away, hoping that one day I'll find the courage to tell you the truth. Or perhaps, in some twist of fate, you'll discover it yourself when the time is right. Whatever happens, know that my love for you is real, Jack. It's the most real thing I've ever known. I only hope that when the truth comes to light, you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. Forever yours, Mary." Jack's vision blurred as tears welled up in his eyes. The words on the page seemed to dance and swirl, each one a dagger to his heart. 30 years. 30 years of what he thought was a sacred union, reduced to a sham in an instant. His mind raced back to their wedding day, Mary in her flowing white gown, her eyes shining with what he had always believed was pure joy. Now he wondered, was that shine from unshed tears of guilt? Had every anniversary been tainted by this secret? The sound of keys jingling at the front door snapped Jack back to the present. Mary was home. He hastily wiped his eyes, but the evidence of his emotional turmoil remained etched on his face. The door opened, and Mary's cheerful voice called out, "Jack, honey, I'm home. I picked up those steaks you like from the butcher. I thought we could have a nice dinner tonight, just the two of..." Her words trailed off as she entered the living room and saw Jack, slumped in his chair, the letter clutched in his trembling hands. The grocery bags she was carrying fell to the floor with a thud. "Jack?" Mary's voice was barely a whisper, her face draining of color as her eyes fixed on the envelope. How did you? Jack slowly raised his head, his eyes meeting Mary's. In that moment, the weight of 3 decades of deception hung heavy between them. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Why?" The single word escaped Jack's lips, laden with hurt, betrayal, and a desperate plea for understanding. Mary took a step forward, her hand reaching out instinctively, but she froze as Jack flinched away from her touch. Tears began to stream down her face as the reality of the situation crashed over her. "Jack, I can explain," she began, her voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was protecting us, our love." But Jack wasn't listening anymore. His mind was awash with memories. Their first apartment, the birth of their children, family vacations, the countless small moments that had made up their life together. Each memory now felt tainted, called into question by this earth-shattering revelation. As Mary continued to speak, her words blending into an unintelligible buzz, Jack's gaze fell on their wedding photo on the mantelpiece. The smiling faces of their younger selves stared back at him, frozen in a moment of pure happiness. A happiness that, he now realized, had been built on a foundation of sand. In that instant, Jack knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The life he thought he knew, the love he had cherished for 30 years, was forever changed. As the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the room, Jack and Mary stood on opposite sides of an emotional chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. The story of Jack and Mary Pearson, a tale of love, lies, and the fragility of trust, was about to take a turn that neither of them could have ever imagined. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky outside, the future of their relationship hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of a precipice from which there might be no return. The warm golden light of a summer evening flooded through the bay windows of the Pearson home, a stark contrast to the icy silence that had settled between Jack and Mary. The clock on the mantel ticked away, each second stretching into an eternity as the couple stood frozen in their emotional standoff. Mary's trembling hand reached out, grasping for words that seemed to slip away like sand. "Jack, please, let me explain," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack's eyes, once warm with love, now burned with a mixture of hurt and anger. "Explain?" he scoffed, his voice hoarse. "Explain 30 years of lies, Mary? How do you explain that?" As if struck by his words, Mary stumbled backward, collapsing onto the floral-patterned sofa they had picked out together years ago. The weight of her secret, carried for so long, seemed to press down on her shoulders, aging her before Jack's very eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Mary began, her words tumbling out in a rush. "We were so young, so in love. When I found out about the paperwork error, I panicked." Jack's mind raced back to their whirlwind romance. They had met at a 4th of July barbecue in Central Park, 2 kids fresh out of college with dreams as big as the New York skyline. Mary, with her infectious laugh and bright green eyes, had stolen his heart faster than he could say apple pie. "Remember how excited we were?" Mary continued, her eyes glazing over with memories. "You had just landed that job at the firm, and I was starting my residency. We were broke, but we were happy." Jack's jaw clenched. "Happy living a lie," he muttered. Mary flinched at his words. No, Jack. Our love was never a lie. Never. She took a shaky breath. When I discovered the error, we were already planning the wedding. Your parents had put down deposits. My dress was being altered. I thought I could fix it quietly after the ceremony. But you didn't, Jack said, his voice flat. I tried, Mary whispered. But there were complications, forms I didn't understand. And then life just happened. Your promotion, my long hours at the hospital, then the kids. Her voice trailed off, lost in the whirlwind of their shared past. Jack's mind whirled with memories. The birth of their first child, Emily, followed 2 years later by Michael. Sleepless nights, first steps, school plays, and family vacations. A life built on love, yes, but also on a foundation of secrets. All those years, Jack said, his voice cracking. All those anniversaries. You looked me in the eye and said, I do over and over again. Mary's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Because I meant it, Jack. Every single time. In my heart, in my soul, I was your wife. A piece of paper doesn't change that. Doesn't it? Jack challenged, pacing the room. What about our house? Our joint accounts? Our wills? My God, Mary. What about our children? The mention of their children seemed to jolt Mary. The kids, she gasped. They can't know about this. It would destroy them. Jack let out a bitter laugh. Destroy them? Like you've destroyed us. The harsh words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Mary recoiled as if she'd been slapped, her face a mask of anguish. I never meant to hurt you, Jack, she whispered. I love you. I've always loved you. For a moment, Jack's resolve wavered. The pain in Mary's eyes was real as the love they had shared for 3 decades. But the betrayal cut deep, a wound that no amount of explanations could easily heal. I need time, Jack said finally, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I can't look at you right now without seeing every lie, every secret. Mary nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand, she said softly. What do we do now? Jack ran a hand through his graying hair, suddenly feeling every one of his 62 years. I don't know, he admitted. I just don't know. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Jack grabbed his keys and jacket. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days, he said, not meeting Mary's eyes. I need to think. Mary watched helplessly as Jack walked towards the door, each step feeling like a dagger to her heart. As his hand reached for the doorknob, she found her voice one last time. Jack, she called out, causing him to pause. I know I have no right to ask, but please don't tell the kids. Not yet. Let us figure this out first. Jack stood still for a long moment, his back to Mary. Finally, without turning around, he gave a small nod. Then, without another word, he walked out the door, leaving Mary alone in the house that had been their home for 30 years. As the door clicked shut, Mary buried her face in her hands, her body racked with sobs. Outside, Jack sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, as tears he couldn't hold back any longer began to fall. The life they had known, the love they had cherished, now hung by a thread. As night fell over their suburban New York neighborhood, both Jack and Mary faced the daunting question. Could their love survive the weight of such a monumental secret? Or had the foundations of their relationship been irreparably shattered by the truth that had finally come to light? The early morning sun cast long shadows across the polished wood floors of the Westin Hotel's executive suite. Jack Pearson sat at the desk, his laptop open before him, staring blankly at the screen. He hadn't slept. How could he, when his entire world had been turned upside down in the span of a single evening? His finger hovered over the mouse, the cursor blinking on the search bar. How to get a divorce in New York, he typed, then quickly erased it. The word divorce felt like acid on his tongue. 30 years of marriage, or what he thought was marriage. And here he was, contemplating its end. A soft ping from his phone drew his attention. A text from Emily, their daughter. Dad, is everything okay? Mom's not answering her phone, And she never misses our Sunday morning call. Jack's heart clenched. Emily, with her mother's green eyes and his stubborn chin, always so perceptive. He could almost hear her voice, laced with concern. What could he tell her? That her entire life was built on a lie? That the loving marriage she had grown up admiring was nothing but an elaborate charade? "Everything's fine, sweetie," he typed back, the lie tasting bitter in his mouth. "Your mom's just feeling under the weather. I'll have her call you later." As he set the phone down, his gaze fell on his wedding ring. The simple gold band had been a constant presence for 3 decades, a symbol of his commitment, his love. Now it felt heavy, almost suffocating. With trembling fingers, he slipped it off, placing it on the desk with a soft clink. Meanwhile, across town, Mary sat in her kitchen, a cup of cold coffee untouched before her. She had spent the night poring over old photo albums, reliving every moment of their life together. Each smiling picture, each captured memory, now tinged with the shadow of her secret. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. She reached for her phone, her finger hovering over Jack's number. What could she say that she hadn't already said? What words could possibly bridge the chasm that had opened between them? As she set the phone down, her gaze fell on the antique writing desk in the corner of the living room. A gift from Jack on their 25th anniversary. "For all the stories you'll write in our golden years," he had said with a smile. Now it stood as a silent witness to the unraveling of those dreams. Drawn by an impulse she couldn't explain, Mary walked over to the desk. Her hands ran over the smooth wood, fingers tracing the intricate carvings. Almost of their own accord, they found the small, hidden drawer, a feature Jack had been so proud of when he bought it. To her surprise, the drawer slid open easily. Inside, she found a stack of old letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Her heart raced as she recognized her own handwriting on the envelopes. More letters she had written but never sent, confessions and secrets she had buried deep over the years. With shaking hands, Mary untied the ribbon. As she began to read, her eyes widened in shock. These weren't just letters about their marital status. They were a Pandora's box of secrets, each one a potential earthquake waiting to shatter what remained of their relationship. Across town, Jack's phone buzzed again. This time it was Michael, their son. "Hey Dad, just checking in. Everything good at home?" Emily said Mom's sick. Jack stared at the message, a wave of guilt washing over him. Michael, always the peacemaker, so much like Mary in his compassion. How could he shield his children from the fallout of this revelation? As he struggled to formulate a response, his eyes fell on an old briefcase in the corner of the hotel room. He had grabbed it hastily when leaving the house, not even checking its contents. Now, driven by an inexplicable urge, he walked over and opened it. Inside, buried under legal papers and old case files, he found a small, leather-bound journal. His journal from the early years of their marriage. He had forgotten about its existence, lost in the whirlwind of building a career and raising a family. With a mixture of trepidation and curiosity, Jack opened the journal. As he began to read, his breath caught in his throat. There, in his own handwriting, were thoughts and secrets he had long buried, things he had never shared with Mary. In 2 different parts of New York City, Jack and Mary sat surrounded by the ghosts of their past, each uncovering layers of secrets that went far beyond a simple clerical error. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, they both realized that the revelation about their marriage was just the tip of an iceberg of hidden truths. The vibration of Jack's phone cut through the heavy silence. It was a text from Mary. "We need to talk. There's more you need to know." Jack stared at the message, his mind reeling from his own discoveries. "Yes," he typed back, his finger hovering over the send button. "There's more you need to know too." As he hit send, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change even more dramatically. The journey to truth had only just begun, and neither of them could predict where it would lead. In the Pearson household and a nondescript hotel room, 2 people who thought they knew everything about each other were about to discover how little they truly knew. The foundations of their relationship, already cracked, were about to be tested like never before. The quaint Italian bistro on the corner of 5th and Madison was usually a haven of romantic dinners and intimate conversations. Today, however, it bore witness to a meeting fraught with tension and unspoken accusations. Jack and Mary Pearson sat across from each other at a secluded corner table, the untouched plates of pasta between them a stark reminder of their lost appetite. Jack's hands were clasped tightly around a glass of water, his knuckles white with strain. The journal he had discovered lay on the table like a ticking time bomb. Mary's eyes darted nervously between Jack's face and her own stack of letters, which she clutched close to her chest as if they could shield her from the impending storm. "I guess we both have some explaining to do." Jack finally broke the silence, his voice low and controlled. Mary nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Jack, before we start, I need you to know that everything I did, every secret I kept, it was always with the best intentions. I never meant to hurt you." Jack's laugh was hollow, devoid of any humor. "Best intentions? Mary, do you realize what you've done? Our entire marriage, our life together, it's all been a lie." "No!" Mary's voice was sharp, her green eyes flashing with a mixture of pain and determination. "Our love was never a lie, Jack. Never." "Then what do you call this?" Jack pushed his journal across the table. "I found this in my old briefcase. Do you know what's in here, Mary? Every doubt, every fear I had in the early years of our marriage. Things I never told you because I was afraid of ruining what we had." Mary's hand trembled as she reached for the journal. What kind of doubts?" Jack's voice was barely above a whisper. "I almost left you, Mary. 6 months after Emily was born. The stress, the sleepless nights, I felt like I was drowning. I even packed a bag one night while you were asleep." The color drained from Mary's face. "But you didn't leave," she said, her voice small and unsure. "No, I didn't," Jack confirmed. "I looked at you and Emily sleeping, and I couldn't do it. But the fact that I even considered it, I've carried that guilt for decades." Tears welled up in Mary's eyes. "Oh, Jack, why didn't you ever tell me? Why didn't you tell me about our marriage not being legal?" Jack countered, his tone sharp. Mary flinched at his words. She slowly placed her stack of letters on the table. "Because that wasn't the only secret I was keeping," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Jack's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" With shaking hands, Mary pushed the letters towards Jack. "These are letters I wrote to you over the years but never sent. Each one contains a confession, a secret I kept hidden." Jack's heart raced as he picked up the first letter. As he read, his expression morphed from confusion to shock, and finally to a mix of anger and disbelief. You knew about my father's affair?" he choked out, his voice raw with emotion. Mary nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Your mother told me right before our wedding. She made me promise never to tell you. She said it would destroy you, destroy your relationship with your father." Jack's mind reeled. His father, the man he had idolized, the paragon of fidelity and family values, had been unfaithful. And Mary had known all along. "What else?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. "What other secrets have you been keeping from me?" One by one, Mary's secrets tumbled out. The job offer she had turned down in Boston without telling Jack, fearing it would derail his career. The health scare she had hidden from him to spare him worry. Each revelation was like a dagger, chipping away at the foundation of trust they had built over 3 decades. As the last secret was revealed, a heavy silence fell over the table. The bustling of the restaurant faded into the background as Jack and Mary stared at each other, truly seeing each other perhaps for the first time in years. "I don't even know who you are anymore," Jack said, his voice hollow. Mary reached across the table, her hand hovering inches from Jack's. "I'm still me, Jack. I'm still the woman you fell in love with. The woman who has loved you every day for the past 30 years. Jack pulled his hand away, standing up abruptly. "I need some air," he muttered, striding towards the exit. Mary watched him go, her heart breaking all over again. As the door closed behind Jack, she buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Outside, Jack leaned against the cool brick wall of the restaurant, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. The woman he thought he knew better than anyone in the world suddenly felt like a stranger. Yet, beneath the anger and betrayal, a small voice whispered a troubling question. Had he truly been any more honest with her? As the New York City traffic rushed by, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the sidewalk, Jack Pearson faced the most difficult decision of his life. Could he forgive the lies? Could they rebuild their relationship on the ashes of these revelations? Or was this the final chapter in the story of Jack and Mary Pearson? The answers to these questions would shape not only their future but the lives of their children and the legacy of their love. As the sun began to set over the city skyline, casting long shadows across the bustling streets, Jack took a deep breath and turned back towards the restaurant door. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The New York City skyline glittered in the distance, a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere inside Jack's temporary apartment. It had been a week since the explosive revelations at the Italian bistro, a week of sleepless nights and soul-searching for both Jack and Mary Pearson. Jack stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a tumbler of whiskey untouched in his hand. The city lights blurred as he stared unseeing, his mind replaying the events of the past week like a broken record. A soft knock at the door jolted him from his reverie. He knew who it was before he even opened it. Mary stood in the hallway, looking smaller and more vulnerable than he had ever seen her. The confident, vivacious woman he had married seemed to have aged years in just a week. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack stepped aside wordlessly, allowing her to enter. The silence between them was heavy, laden with unspoken words and raw emotions. Mary's eyes darted around the sparsely furnished apartment, taking in the evidence of Jack's temporary life away from her. A suitcase in the corner, takeout containers on the kitchen counter, and a pillow and blanket on the couch, clear signs that he hadn't been sleeping in the bedroom. "Jack," Mary began, her voice trembling, "I know I have no right to ask this of you, but I need to know. Where do we go from here?" Jack sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. "I don't know, Mary. I honestly don't know." He turned to face her fully, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and confusion. "How do we move forward from this? How do I trust you again?" Mary flinched at his words but stood her ground. "I know I've hurt you, Jack. I know I've broken your trust. But please believe me when I say that everything I did out of love." "Love?" Jack's voice was sharp. "Is it love to keep secrets that affect our entire lives? Is it love to lie to me for 30 years? Tears welled up in Mary's eyes. "I was wrong, Jack. I see that now. But I was so scared of losing you, of ruining what we had. Can't you understand that?" Jack's resolve wavered at the sight of Mary's tears. Despite everything, seeing her in pain still cut him to the core. He took a step towards her, then stopped, caught between the urge to comfort her and the need to protect himself. "I understand fear, Mary," he said softly, "but I thought we were partners. I thought we faced everything together." Mary nodded, wiping away her tears. We are. Jack, these past 30 years haven't been a lie. Our love, our family, the life we built together, it's all real." Jack turned back to the window, staring out at the city. But how much of it was built on lies? How many decisions did we make based on secrets and half-truths? Mary moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel his warmth but not touching. "I can't change the past, Jack. I wish I could, but I can't. All I can do is promise you honesty from this moment forward. No more secrets, no more lies." Jack looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the lines of worry etched on her face, the pain in her eyes, the trembling of her hands. He saw the woman he had loved for more than half his life, the mother of his children, his partner in all things. And he saw a stranger, a woman capable of keeping earth-shattering secrets. "I don't know if I can do this, Mary," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't know if I can trust you again." Mary's breath hitched, a sob threatening to escape. "Please, Jack, please don't give up on us. We can fix this. We can start over Build something new on a foundation of complete honesty. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the weight of their shared history pressing down on him. Every happy memory, every shared joke, every quiet moment of companionship, all of it felt tainted now. But beneath the pain and betrayal, there was something else. A tiny spark of the love that had brought them together all those years ago. "It won't be easy," he said finally, opening his eyes to meet Mary's gaze. "If we do this, and I'm not saying we will, but if we do, it has to be all or nothing. No more secrets, no matter how small. Complete transparency." Hope bloomed in Mary's eyes. "Anything, Jack. I'll do anything to make this right." Jack nodded slowly. "We'll need help, professional help, and we'll need to tell the kids the truth." Mary paled at the mention of their children but nodded in agreement. "They deserve to know. We'll tell them together." For the first time in days, Jack felt a glimmer of something that might have been hope. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't even acceptance. But it was a start. "I can't promise you anything, Mary," he said softly. "I don't know if we can fix this, but I'm willing to try." Mary's hand found his, their fingers intertwining almost of their own accord. "That's all I ask for, Jack. A chance to try." As they stood there, hand in hand, looking out over the city they had called home for 3 decades, Jack and Mary Pearson faced an uncertain future. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with pain and hard truths. But as the first light of dawn began to break over the New York skyline, they made a silent promise to each other to face whatever came next, together. The price of truth had been high, higher than either of them could have imagined. But as they stood there in the growing light, they dared to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, it might also be the price of a new beginning. The sun had barely risen over the New York skyline when Jack's phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand. Groggily, he reached for it, squinting at the screen. It was a text from his old college roommate, now a clerk at the city records office. "Jack, you need to see this. It's about your marriage certificate. Come to the office ASAP." Fully awake now, Jack's heart raced. What could possibly have surfaced after all this time? He glanced at Mary, still asleep beside him. They had been trying to rebuild their relationship, taking small steps each day. But this could change everything again. An hour later, Jack found himself in a cramped office, surrounded by towering shelves of dusty files. His friend, Tom, looked unusually somber as he handed over a yellowed folder. "I was doing some routine digitization when I came across this," Tom explained. Well, you should see for yourself." With trembling hands, Jack opened the folder. Inside was a copy of his and Mary's marriage certificate, but what caught his eye was a small note attached to it. As he read, the color drained from his face. This can't be right," Jack muttered, his voice barely audible. Tom nodded grimly. "I double-checked. It's all there in black and white." Jack stumbled out of the office, his mind reeling. He needed to talk to Mary. Now, back at their home, Mary was preparing breakfast when Jack burst through the door, wild-eyed and breathless. "Jack, what's wrong?" Mary asked, alarm evident in her voice. Without a word, Jack handed her the folder. Mary's eyes widened as she read the note, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Jack, I had no idea." The note revealed a startling truth. Jack's parents had known about the clerical error in their marriage certificate all along. Not only that, they had actively worked to keep it a secret, going so far as to bribe a local official to bury the paperwork. "Why?" Jack's voice cracked with emotion. "Why would they do this?" Mary sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. "Your mother, she never approved of me. Remember how she tried to talk you out of proposing?" The pieces started falling into place in Jack's mind. His mother's coldness towards Mary over the years, the subtle digs about their hasty marriage, it all made a twisted kind of sense now. "They thought we wouldn't last," Jack realized aloud. "They kept this secret as..." "What? An escape hatch?" Mary reached for his hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "Jack, I swear I didn't know about this. If I had. Jack squeezed her hand, surprising even himself with the gesture. I believe you, Mary. For once, I truly believe you. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on either of them. The very secret that had threatened to tear them apart was now bringing them closer together. What do we do now? Mary asked, her voice small and uncertain. Jack took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over him. We tell the truth. All of it. To the kids, to my parents, to everyone. Mary nodded, a mix of fear and determination in her eyes. Together. Together, Jack confirmed. As they sat there, hands clasped tightly, a new understanding passed between them. The lies and secrets that had plagued their marriage hadn't started with Mary's discovery of the clerical error. They had been there from the beginning, planted by those who should have supported them the most. The road ahead would still be difficult. There would be hard conversations, painful revelations, and bridges to rebuild. But for the first time since this whole ordeal began, Jack and Mary felt truly united. They had been victims of others' manipulations, yes, but they had also been complicit in maintaining a web of secrets. Now, armed with the full truth, they had a chance to start anew, to build a relationship based on honesty, trust, and the love that had brought them together in the first place. As the morning light streamed through the kitchen windows, Jack and Mary Pearson made a silent vow. No more secrets, no more lies. Whatever came next, they would face it together, stronger for having weathered this storm. The great revelation had shaken the very foundations of their life together. But from these tremors, a new, stronger foundation was beginning to form, one built on truth, understanding, and a love that had endured despite it all. The Pearson family home, once a haven of warmth and laughter, now felt like a pressure cooker of emotions. Jack and Mary sat side by side on their worn leather couch, facing their children, Emily and Michael, who perched uneasily on the edge of the coffee table. The air was thick with tension, unspoken words hanging heavy between them. Emily, her green eyes, so like her mother's, darted between her parents, worry etched across her face. Mom, Dad, what's going on? You're scaring us. Michael, always the more stoic of the two, simply sat with his arms crossed, a furrow deep between his brows. Whatever it is, just tell us, he said, his voice gruff with concern. Jack took a deep breath, his hand finding Mary's and squeezing it gently. Kids, there's something we need to tell you. Something that, well, it's going to change things. Mary picked up where Jack left off, her voice trembling slightly. We've recently discovered that our marriage was never legally valid. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's jaw dropped, while Michael's frown deepened. What do you mean, never legally valid? Michael asked, his tone sharp. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration his children knew all too well. There was a clerical error when we got married. We just found out about it recently. Emily's eyes filled with tears. But you've been married for 30 years. How is this possible? Mary leaned forward, her heart breaking at the pain in her daughter's voice. Sweetie, it's complicated. There's more. Over the next hour, Jack and Mary laid bare the entire story, the initial discovery, the secrets they'd both kept, and finally, the revelation about Jack's parents' involvement. With each new piece of information, they watched their children's expressions cycle through shock, disbelief, and hurt. So what? Michael's voice was cold. Our entire family has been a lie. No, Jack and Mary exclaimed in unison. Your father and I love each other, Mary insisted. We love you both. That has never been a lie. Emily wiped at her tears. But you've been lying to us. All this time. Jack felt a lump form in his throat. We made mistakes, Emily. Big ones. We're trying to make it right now. Michael stood up abruptly, pacing the room. Make it right? How do you make something like this right? The pain in his son's voice cut Jack to the core. He realized, perhaps for the first time, the true extent of the damage their secrets had caused. It wasn't just about him and Mary anymore. Their children, innocent bystanders, were now bearing the brunt of their parents' mistakes. Mary reached out to Michael, but he flinched away from her touch. "I need some air," he muttered, heading for the door. "Michael, wait," Jack called out, but the slam of the front door cut him off. Emily stood up, her face a mask of confusion and hurt. I need some time to process this," she said quietly, retreating to her old bedroom. Left alone in the living room, Jack and Mary sat in stunned silence. The weight of their children's pain settled over them like a heavy blanket. "We've hurt them so much," Mary whispered, her voice breaking. Jack nodded, feeling every one of his years. "We did what we thought was right at the time, but it wasn't enough," Mary finished for him. As the clock ticked away on the mantel, Jack and Mary Pearson faced the harsh reality of their choices. The truth had come at a steep price, leaving invisible scars on the hearts of those they loved most. "What do we do now?" Mary asked, her voice small and uncertain. Jack took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "We keep moving forward. We give them time. We answer their questions honestly. And we prove to them that our love for each other and for them is real." Mary leaned her head on Jack's shoulder, drawing comfort from his presence. "And us? Where do we go from here?" Jack was quiet for a moment, considering. The past weeks had been a roller coaster of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion. But sitting here now, feeling Mary's warmth beside him, he felt something else stirring. "Hope. We start over," he said finally. "Not from scratch, we can't erase 30 years. But we build something new, something honest." Mary lifted her head, meeting Jack's gaze. "Together." A small smile tugged at Jack's lips. "Together." As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across their living room, Jack and Mary Pearson sat hand in hand, facing an uncertain future. The road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with conversations, tears, and hopefully, healing. But for the first time in weeks, they felt united in their purpose. The invisible scars of their past would take time to heal for them and for their children. But as they sat there, surrounded by the memories of a life built together, they dared to hope that these scars might eventually fade, replaced by the strength that comes from facing the truth and choosing love day after day. The Pearson family's story was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. The early morning mist hung low over Central Park, the city just beginning to stir awake. Jack and Mary Pearson walked hand in hand along a familiar path, their footsteps crunching softly on the gravel. They had come full circle, back to where their story began all those years ago. It had been 6 months since the truth about their marriage came to light. 6 months of therapy sessions, tearful conversations, and slow, painful rebuilding. Their children, Emily and Michael, were still coming to terms with the revelations, but small steps of reconciliation were being made. They paused at a worn wooden bench, their bench, where Jack had proposed over 3 decades ago. Mary's fingers traced the faded heart carved into the wood, a reminder of younger, more carefree days. "Do you remember that day?" Jack asked softly, his voice tinged with nostalgia. Mary nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "How could I forget? You were so nervous you dropped the ring in the grass. We spent an hour looking for it." Jack chuckled, the sound warming Mary's heart. It had been too long since she'd heard him laugh like that. "Not my finest moment," he admitted. They sat down, the familiar contours of the bench a comfort. For a moment, they simply sat in silence, watching the early joggers and dog walkers pass by. "Mary," Jack began, his tone serious, "these past months, they've been the hardest of my life." Mary's heart clenched, fear gripping her. Was this it? After all they'd been through, was he going to say it was too much? But Jack continued, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that took her breath away. "But they've also been some of the most important. I've learned more about you, about us, in these months than in all our years together." Mary felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Jack, He held up a hand, gently cutting her off. "Let me finish, please. I've had a lot of time to think, to really examine our life together. And you know what I realized?" Mary shook her head, not trusting her voice. I realized that despite everything, the lies, the secrets, the pain, I still love you. Maybe even more than before, because now I know all of you. The good, the bad, the ugly. And I choose you. All of you. Tears were flowing freely down Mary's cheeks now. Oh, Jack. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Mary's eyes widened in recognition. It was the same box he had fumbled with all those years ago. Mary Elizabeth Thompson, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. Will you marry me? For real this time, no secrets, no lies. Just us, as we are, imperfect but perfect for each other. Mary's hand flew to her mouth, a sob escaping her. Yes, she whispered. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Jack slipped the ring onto her finger, the same ring from all those years ago. But somehow it felt different, weightier, more significant. As the sun broke through the morning mist, casting a golden glow over the park, Jack and Mary sealed their new beginning with a kiss. It wasn't the passionate kiss of young lovers, but something deeper, more profound, a kiss that spoke of shared history, of pain overcome, of love rediscovered. They still had a long road ahead. There were still conversations to be had, trust to be rebuilt, relationships to mend. But in that moment, on that bench in Central Park, Jack and Mary Pearson felt the first real stirrings of hope. Their love story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning anew. And this time, it would be built on a foundation of honesty, understanding, and a love that had weathered the fiercest of storms. As they walked out of the park, hand in hand, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because sometimes, love isn't about perfect beginnings or fairy tale endings. Sometimes, it's about choosing each other day after day, through the best and worst of times. And for Jack and Mary Pearson, that choice made in full knowledge of each other's flaws and secrets was the most beautiful love story of all. Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.